Hello world, it's BirdOPrey5, Qapla. Welcome to the BirdOPrey5 X channel. And let me mute my sound. There we go. I will put this. Nope, that was the wrong thing to press. We'll put this to default view. Welcome Cinnabon Bunny, 54.5 Yorktown, and DJ Odyssey, if you guys are still here. This was a last-minute stream, and John Araki Qapla, not Ryan Johnson. Hello in Qapla. Now, guys, I apologize. I'm not going to be reading a lot of the chat tonight because today is actually just going to be my origin story. And many of you will have heard it, most of it, parts of it, depending on how long you've been here. But we've had a lot of new people to the channel recently, over 120 subscribers in the last 28 days. Thank you all so much. And the month before that was almost as much. So we've got new people. We got people who were not here in the beginning. My first bed live stream, rant against my hospital bed. I'll have gone over a lot of what I'm going to go over tonight. And but maybe I'll add some more things because this is a true origin story. I'm not going to start at me getting sick. I'm going to start as far back as I can remember. And later on, after the stream is done, I will put a pinned comment so that you can jump to the point at where I got sick if you're not interested in hearing a very quick summary of my life before that. So, the BirdOPrey5 origin story starts November 13th, 1978. I was born to Mom-O-Prey and the late Dad-O-Prey. I was their first child, a bit of a miracle child. Mom-O-Prey was told she was not going to be able to get pregnant, but I popped up a couple of years after you guys got married. Yeah, about 2 years after they got married, and little Joey. And I was the first grandchild of my father's parents. My mother's parents, her natural parents had both passed away. Her stepmother was still alive when I was born for quite a while. But it was mostly my father's side of the family that I knew growing up. They were the closer half. Mom's family would come over a little less often, but they were very... Yeah, her sister would come quite a bit. But I think it's fair to say that it was a daddy's side. There was more of them that were closer by. I think it's fair to say they were a bigger influence. So I was the only grandchild at the time and got all the attention. Although, to be honest, I really don't remember anything of it because my first memory is not until after Sis O'Prey was born, 2 years and a half a month later in December 1980. And my first memory was being in Dad O'Prey's car on our way to visit Mom O'Prey in the hospital. And she had given birth in Staten Island, but we lived in Brooklyn. So he had to cross the Verrazano Bridge. And at the time, there were people that would walk around the toll booth selling newspapers and flowers. So Dad O'Prey bought Mom O'Prey a couple of roses and a newspaper so she could read. And I remember him calling people over to the car to, pay whatever it was, 25 cents for a newspaper and maybe $1 for a rose. And he took it through the window and we were waiting. And I knew I was going to go see my baby sister. She'd already been born. I was excited. And that was it. That's honestly my first memory. After I got to the hospital, I'm told I tripped a nurse on purpose, which was, something I probably would have done. I was an asshole. I was an asshole as a kid. I grew out of it. I grew out of it later, but as a kid, I was an a-hole. I tripped a nurse on purpose, and she apologized to me. Because I was just a little boy. I was just a little boy. Clearly, a little boy wouldn't purposely trip a nurse in a hospital, but apparently I did. I don't remember it, but I believe Mama Pray. Obviously, she had no reason to lie about that. And I'll be honest, as a kid, I was a bit troubled. I was a bit troubled as a child. I bit a classmate in preschool. I got thrown out of school. I wasn't in school all that long. Got thrown out of school in pre-kindergarten. Pre-K, got thrown out of school for biting a kid. Now, in my defense, the kid skipped the line. We were all on line to go on a swing set. It was a very orderly line. It was, a single file line. And I was maybe 2 away from getting up onto being next to go on the swing. And this bigger a-hole kid than me just decides to cut the line and go in front of the line. And the teacher obviously didn't notice it or whatever. So I got pissed at him. I got mad at him. And he refused to move. So I bit him on the arm. I didn't know what else to do. I was 3, 4 years old. So I got booted out. Booted out of kindergarten. It turned out later, Mama Pray found out that I actually, the PTA president of the school was waiting for an opening to happen so they could get their other kid, their second kid into pre-K. Their first kid was already going to the school. So they were just looking for a reason to expel someone so they could make the PTA president happy. But you know what? It was the best thing that happened to me, because after I got kicked out of a public school, I went to a school called Big Apple, which was a private school. Not private. It was above a freaking supermarket in Brooklyn. We're not talking about some prestigious private school. It was nice though. It was, the people were much nicer. The teachers were much nicer. The other kids were much nicer. I did pre-K, kindergarten there. BirdOPrey5 came in and did a pre-K while I was in kindergarten. And, it was a good time. All the teachers were called aunt or uncle. It just made you feel better. And I remember several things from that pre-K and kindergarten class. I remember nap time. I would sit by a window and I would look out a window, and every day around nap time, which I think was around 11 a.m., there was a flock of birds, a flock of pigeons probably. But this flock of birds would fly around outside the window, and I would just follow them with my eyes for, 45 minutes, however long they had us resting our heads on the desk. I don't think I ever fell asleep, but it was just something I did to pass the time. I remember, some of the layout of the school, and almost every day, BirdOPrey5 they'd take her to me, because she'd start crying because she wanted her parents. And obviously the parents weren't there, but they would bring her to me and I would calm her down. It was the big brother. And everything was good. Of course, I couldn't speak right. I had a pretty bad speech impediment. And I had to go for speech therapy lessons. And I couldn't even pronounce my name, Joey, correctly. I was saying my name, I'd introduce people, I'd say my name was Growy. I had an Uncle Chris, I'd call him Uncle Tree. A lot of words I couldn't pronounce, more so than today. It was really bad. Adults had trouble understanding me, but BirdOPrey5, she could translate. She knew what I was saying, even when most other people didn't. Then I went to speech therapy, and I cheated. I cheated my way through speech therapy. We had this little mechanical clicker device that the therapist would give me to hold. And I don't know if I had to, she'd reset it to 0. And I think every time we got a word, when I pronounced a word correctly, I was supposed to click it. And I think when we got to 60 or something, then we were done for the day. So, I would say a word. Okay, I'd get right click, 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 and she'd watch me click it. Okay. But then she'd go on a phone call. She'd get a phone call, and she'd start talking on the phone for 10 minutes to somebody else, and I would get annoyed. So every so often, like every minute or two that she wasn't with me, I was clicking it because I was pissed that, she's wasting my time. I mean, it turns out in hindsight, I guess I was only screwing myself over. I have to imagine she knew that I was clicking it. I mean, but she never let on that she did. So I thought I was getting over on her, and she was probably thinking, dumb, stupid kid, I'm trying to help him. He thinks he's getting over on me. He's getting over on himself. But actually, what they thought was going to take several years of speech therapy, I actually completed much quicker than they thought. Fairly good after that. So we get to elementary school, and I'm in a regular class, and my first grade teacher, Miss Stewart, very nice, super nice lady, very strong Jamaican accent, but she was one of my favorite teachers of all time. And I was a good student, good enough. Not much happened. One time, she decided that she was gonna she told nobody to talk or raise her hands or do anything. She didn't want to hear from any of us. She told us all to be quiet for, 45 minutes or an hour. And I really had to go to the bathroom, really had to go. It was first grade, but the teacher told us don't raise our hands. And I know I couldn't go to the bathroom without raising my hand for permission. And this is what a stickler I was for the rules. I ended up peeing my pants in the first grade. And the teacher's like, why did you pee your pants? I was like, because you said don't raise your hands. And she was like, you just couldn't raise your hands if you got to go to the bathroom. I was like, well, you didn't say that. You didn't say that. So she happened to have another pair of pants. She had, she said she had a pair of her son's pants she happened to have with her. So I changed pants. They happened to fit. But that was weird. But that's just the point that I used to, some rules I would follow without question, to the point that I'd even pee my pants. Okay? I had a big wheels, and Mom O'Prey said I could go from in front of our house on the block to in front of a house, 6 or 7 houses down, and I could never go in the street. Never allowed to go in the street. Also, I was allergic to caterpillars. So not supposed to have caterpillars touch me. So one day I rode down the big wheel to, 5, 6 houses down. And I turned around and started coming back. And there's a caterpillar right in the middle of the sidewalk hanging from a tree. I can't go under it, and I can't go around it, because going around it would mean going in the street. And I can't go past, and I can't go around the block, because, I'd be frightened of hell to go around the block at that age. But there was nothing I could do. So I sat for 45 minutes, an hour, while this caterpillar just hung there. Finally, Mom O'Prey came out of the house, like, where the hell are you? And she looks and she sees me. She's like, why are you stopped there? I was like, there's a caterpillar. So she came and she smushes the caterpillar away, and I ride home. But it's like, I was like, no, I'm stuck. I not allowed to go in the street, not allowed to touch the caterpillar. I didn't know what else to do. I just waited. Luckily, I didn't have to pee. Otherwise, it would have been a mess. So things like that. I was stickler for some rules. Other rules, however, like if you wronged me, I did not At first I might be okay with it, and like I had neighbors who's younger than me, but we'd always play blocks and wooden blocks. Back when wooden blocks were one of the funnest toys ever. You could just build anything with wooden blocks. And I would build these big, tremendous buildings. And this kid, he was maybe a couple years younger, which when you're 7, 8, 9 years old, that's a pretty big span of age. And so he could barely get 2 blocks to line up together. And then this happened every time. I'd build something nice, he'd get pissed and he'd knock it down. And then I'd get pissed and I'd leave the house in anger. But of course I was back there a few days later because he had these big wooden blocks and I didn't. So once he actually built something nice, then I knocked his down. I was like, yeah, now you know how I feel. I felt bad, but I also felt like I was teaching him a lesson. So it's not that I didn't break any rules. I just didn't break rules unless somebody had already wronged me, right? I didn't mind biting somebody who passed me in line. I didn't mind knocking down somebody's, thing they built if they knocked down something I built. But if a teacher told me not to do something, I wouldn't do it. If BirdOPrey told me not to do something, I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And that was it. That was a very awkward kid. And second grade was terrible. Second grade was horrible. I went from having a great teacher in first grade to an asshole teacher in second grade. She had no business teaching. And in second grade, one of the kids, John, he used to cheat off me all the time. So I would put up my folder, like to hide my tests, so he couldn't cheat off of me during quizzes and tests. And the teacher would come around and knock them down. And she's like, no folders, no barricades. Nobody's cheating off you. I was pissed. And then BirdOPrey went for parent-teacher conference, and John's mother talked to BirdOPrey, and she's like, oh, you must be Joey's mother. I always love when John sits next to Joey. He always does so good on his tests. BirdOPrey was ready to strangle her. Anyway, I'm going to be honest. The second teacher's name, Mrs. Router. She had no business teaching. If you know Mrs. Router, tell her she was my worst teacher I ever had. Mrs. Router. I'm doxing her. I'm not. I don't know anything else about her. I don't even remember what she looks like. She was a white lady. Mrs. Router. And asshole teacher. She marked me wrong on a spelling test. The word was cookies. How do you spell cookies? C-O-O-K-I-E-S. Everybody in the world spells cookies. C-O-O-K-I-E-S. This bitch marked me wrong on a spelling test. She spelled it C-O-O-K-Y-S. Y-S, what the fuck, lady? You're teaching us how to spell. Okay, Y becomes I-E. Y becomes I-E. This was a fundamental rule you had to learn of spelling. Why would you tell us cookies is spelt with a Y? BirdOPrey got pissed and she brought the test to the principal. And the principal said, opened the dictionary. And sure enough, frickin' Merriam-Webster, you son of a bitch. They had both spellings. They had both spellings of cookies. Merriam-Webster said that cookies with a Y was somehow an acceptable spelling in 1984, or whatever the fuck year it was. Probably 1984. What the F, Merriam-Webster? Nobody ever spelt it with a Y. Except her and you. So, needless to say, I was not doing great in second grade. And they wanted to put me in special education. Hi, Sassy. Sassy's doing her beagle sneeze because she just came in. So, yeah, she was a wireless router. So they wanted to put me in special education. My parents didn't know. They said maybe they needed special ed, but they knew enough to not just take the school's word for it, and they had me tested to see, right, to see what was going on with me. And they took me to get tested, and it came back that, in fact, I had a pretty high IQ, enough to get me into the gifted program. Plenty enough to get me into the gifted program. So when they came back with the test results to the school, needless to say, some people were surprised. But third grade, I entered into the gifted program, which was called the Astor program at the time. And we had a lot more work than we did. I was a lot more academic minded than the regular classes. And I finally started thriving a bit in school. It was a turnaround. My third grade was much, much better than my second. My fourth grade was better than my third, and fifth grade was better than fourth. And the last 3 years of elementary school was good, better, and best in terms of teachers and classes and academics and just general social adjustment. It was a relatively good time. Then they decided, instead of having sixth grade be an elementary school, they were going to move sixth grade to junior high, which then they changed it from junior high to intermediate. So it doesn't matter. The point was fifth, sixth, and seventh grades. Huh? Oh, right. Sixth, seventh, and eighth grades were a disaster. This school was located let's just say it was zoned for quite a diverse population, including 2 different housing projects. And there were even at the time, there was some violence going on in this school. And more than once, I was the victim. It got BirdOPrey so pissed that he was down at the school threatening to hire private security guards. That if the school couldn't protect me, he was going to hire private security guards. I got attacked in a bathroom once. There was supposedly somebody said that there was a gun at one point. I didn't see a gun, but after leaving school one day, some other students reported that somebody was threatening them with a gun. I didn't see a gun. They did ask me. They wanted my money. They wanted my lunch money. I was like, lunch money? I mean, granted, I was a big, heavy guy, and I mean, still, I'm 6'4". You know, I was like probably 6'3" at this point, coming out of junior high school. And like, where's your lunch money? I'm like, look at me, I ate my lunch. What you think I have lunch money? And I just kept walking, and they just let it be. But you know, some of the smaller kids, I guess they were more worried about it. They reported seeing a gun. I didn't see a gun. If I saw a gun, I might have been more worried, but it was not a good school. In fact, junior high school was, while I had some good teachers, it was a terrible several. Those grades, as puberty sets in, that is the worst place. The kids should be as separated as possible. Each grade should be in its own building. Okay, they shouldn't be mixing 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. It's a terrible plan. But yeah, so that was bad. Once I got to high school, though, things calmed down. It was a high school I wanted to go to. It was not a high school that people could get in. It was very few people that could get into this high school just because they lived where they lived. It wasn't quite. New York City had some specialty high schools that you had to take a test to get into, and I could probably have passed those tests, but I didn't want to go all the way into Manhattan or the Bronx for a specialty high school this high school, Edward R. Murrow, was in Brooklyn, not terribly far from where I lived, and was good enough. And so I got into Edward R. Murrow. I had a pretty good 4 years there. In fact, I started the school's first web page. And to be frank, I had hoped to put in the features that would later come up on Facebook, like rating people, and it was really meant for students to rate teachers, but ratings people, leaving comments, every student being able to make their own page. These were all things I had planned on implementing, but an asshole teacher thought that this was going too far and kind of like almost threatened me about, that he said that I was just too young to know, but he worked with the people who created the internet, he says, and he could get me thrown off. So the web page never got much beyond a basic homepage for the school and some information for students, but it was enough that the principal at the time recognized it as the future and credited me with doing the school's first webpage in our commencement ceremony. I also, in high school, I had pretty much settled that I wanted to do computer engineering as my major in college. Now, engineering mostly because I always loved building things. I mean, as a kid, my favorite toys were Legos and Constructs, Qapla, anything that you could do to build, Lincoln Logs. I loved building. I loved breaking things too, but I also loved building things. And so I really wanted to do engineering. I loved computers. I had my first computer when we were in second or third grade. Yeah, we got our first computer really young. And in fact, the Commodore 64 with a 300 baud modem that we had the Q-Link service for. Q-Link was the predecessor of America Online, and it's due to Q-Link that I have the username BirdOPrey5 even today. Because when we got Q-Link and you had to make a username, it could be a maximum of 10 characters. First grade. We got the computer. Okay, so we got the computer. It must have been first grade. I did my first book report on a computer. In those days, they didn't want you doing reports on computers. Nowadays, you have to do reports on computers. In those days, a lot of teachers didn't want to see it typed. But anyway, yeah, I had terrible handwriting. So a lot of teachers, after they saw my handwriting, they're like, you know what, you can type it. But some of them didn't want to see it typed. But that's neither here nor there. So I wanted to be Bird of Prey after the Klingon Bird of Prey. So I guess whatever year Star Trek 3 came out. Alexa, what year did Star Trek 3 come out?
The film Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, was released about 36 years ago on June 1st, 1984.
So 1984. So probably 84 or 85, we got Q-Link. I mean, we didn't have Q-Link. I don't think we had Q-Link from the moment we had the computer. Right. Okay, so 85, maybe even 86, we got Q-Link. And I wanted a name. I wanted it to be after the Klingon Bird of Prey. So I put in Bird of Prey, and of course it was taken. So I said, okay, I'll put in BirdOPrey. And of course that was taken. So then I said, well, I guess, and I can only put in one number, because truth be told, if I couldn't put in, I probably would have done BirdOPrey 13, because I was born on November 13th, and, that's what everybody does, and 13 was my lucky number, but I can only put in one more digit, or character. So I said, well, what's the best number between 0 and 9? And I chose 5. Because to me, it sounded like that was a round number. And I said, well, they're all round numbers. Well, I figured if you're going to round between 0 and 10, you would round at 5, It's halfway between. Don't worry about the logic. The point was, that's where the 5 came from. It wasn't somebody's birthday. It wasn't a lucky number. It was just in the, trying to get a name. And it's like, what's a nice round number? And 5 came to my head. Hence 5, hence BirdOPrey5. And literally since maybe 86, I've been known as BirdOPrey5 on the internet. Now, granted, the first was Qlink, but once AOL broke off of Qlink, I still had an AOL account, so I had BirdOPrey5 on that. And to this day, if you want to email me, you can email me at birdopray5@aol.com. I still check that email. Not every day, but often enough, many times a week. So yeah, I'd say I probably have one of the longest running email addresses outside of a university. I just think so. So that was college. That was high school. We did the web page. I worked on computers, my whole school career. And so I want to do computer engineering. And Dad O'Prey, of his many jobs in his life, one of his most interesting, at least to me growing up, he had a video game route where he'd put out video games like Pac-Man and Street Fighter and Arkanoid and Russian Attack and a ton of other video games. And he'd put them out in candy stores and laundromats and stuff. And he'd have a route. He'd go around and he'd take the money out of the games. Sometimes they need to be fixed. So he had a work van, and him and Mom's brother and sometimes his brother, they would take, they'd take games in the van. They'd bring them to our garage. Dad and his partners would work on the games, fix them. So Dad always had a big workbench with solder, wires, microchips, and circuit boards all around. And I grew up smelling solder. Yeah, he didn't just fix them. He built many of the games because they came in kits. He came in kits. Some of these kits he got from not so reputable places. But that was just the way things worked at the time. And there were some other gaming devices too. But they were all big fun for me. And it got me into this whole building. And so that is what brought me into engineering. And so when deciding on what college I wanted to go to, I picked Hofstra, because Hofstra on Long Island, I wasn't sure if I was going to live at home or live on campus, but Hofstra would let you do either. It was close enough I could drive, but they also had on-campus housing. But more importantly, while there were other technical institutes that probably would have been better had I been sure I was going to stay an engineer, Hofstra had a big humanities program. So if I didn't want to stick with engineering, I will check my AOL mail after the stream. So if I didn't want to stick with engineering, I could switch to English or whatever other major I might want to do. And to be honest, at the very beginning of college, I was, 60% sure I wanted to be an engineer, but there was 40% sure maybe I want to switch to being an English major. But as soon as I got into the engineering classes, and within a semester and the second semester, I knew engineering was where I wanted to be. And so I never looked back at English. However, ironically, in my college yearbook, we got at graduation, they listed me as an English major, because on the info card we were supposed to fill out, they asked for your major, and the way Hofstra abbreviated engineering was ENGG. So I put ENGG as my major. Now, obviously, the person who was reading these cards and translating them into majors in this book had no idea what ENGG meant and just thought, oh, it must mean English. Why there's a second G, I guess they didn't think that far. So they printed me as being an English major. A lot other engineers all got engineering. I don't know why I got English, but I laughed because I started college not knowing if I was going to do English or engineering. I graduated doing engineering, but the book still said English. So whatever. Also in college, I had some weird experiences. Experiences that made me wonder, could I, did I have the power? Was fate set? Could I change my fate if I'd wanted to? And not fate about getting ill at this point. I didn't have any idea that was coming. But a couple of classes I thought I was going to fail. And I wasn't allowed to. Now, the first one, now understand, my senior year of high school, I took a bunch of AP courses. So I knew most of what we were being taught the first year of college anyway. So I started and I got almost all A's the first semester. I think I might have got all A's the first semester of college. So I had a pretty good, they looked at me as being a pretty good student. But the second semester, we did our first class. We went from Calc 1 to Calc 2. Now, Calc 2 I had never touched in high school. And I had what I thought personally was probably, she was a nice woman. But, oh my God, I found her lessons so boring. And I like math. I watch to this day on YouTube. I watch Numberphile and math-based channels and find their videos really interesting. So it's not that I have an aversion for math. I love math. But this lady, oh my God, it was hard. It was hard to get through her lessons, and I didn't learn much. And I was doing tests in this class, and I got 36 on one test. I got like a 45. I mean, and other people were getting higher grades. We were getting 80s, 90s. And I was like, holy shit, I can't imagine. I didn't know what to do. And I mean, I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen, if I was going to have to repeat the grade or what. I hoped I would somehow do okay on the final, that I could eke out a C or something. And the day of the final came, and she wasn't there. Another teacher was covering the final. I'm like, well, what happened? And they're like, unfortunately, her father passed away, so she couldn't be here today. So teacher gave out the final, and I don't think I did all that good on it. It seemed to be just as bad as all the others. So I was like, whatever. I gave the test in. I was waiting. I was scared. I was scared what I was going to get in this class. And I got the second semester report card a few weeks later. A in every subject except the math, the Calc 2, was a B. A B. Now, the B I could not understand, okay? If it was a C minus, I would have been like, okay. I think I needed at least a C for it to count, though, because for an engineering major, a D plus, or a C minus, I don't think they counted. I think I needed to have at least a C. So I thought maybe if I'm lucky, I will get a C. I couldn't justify it how I would, but I thought maybe, just maybe. But I got a B. So for the summer, I was like, oh, maybe I really didn't do that bad. Maybe she's grading on a curve. Maybe a lot of people did really bad, and I was still a B. I was like, it was like, okay, maybe I overreacted. But then the next fall, when our third semester started, say, And I started with Calc 3, and we were a week into the semester, and the Calc 3 teacher had just given us her first test. And I handed in the first test, and the Calc 3 teacher says, "Oh, you're Joe so-and-so." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Joe, I don't think you're supposed to be in this class." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I have you on a list of people who failed Calc 2. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I got a B in Calc 2. I could show you my report card. It's, I can bring it in or something." He's like, no, if you say you got a B, I believe you. It was probably a mistake." He said, "Okay, no problem." Anyway, I got 100 on that first test. So any question he had as to whether I should be in that class or not, I think I was the only person to get 100 on that first test. And so he realized, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think that if somebody told him that, "Hey, this kid failed Calc 2, but I got an A in Calc 1, an F in Calc 2, and I already got 100 on his first test in Calc 3, where's the mistake?" Right? So I don't know. Then I pledged a fraternity, and one of the brothers of the fraternity who did, what did he do? Tutoring. He did math tutoring. He also had my name on the list of people who failed. He came to me in private and he said, "Do you need help with your math?" I was like, "No, why do you think I need help with my math?" He's like, "You were on a list of people who failed Calc 2. I was like, "I got a B. I don't know what to tell you." And he's like, "Okay." He backed off. I was like, "I got a B and I got 100 on my Calc 3 test." So I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I was nervous. Somebody was going to realize that I probably should have failed Calc 2. And I realized at that point, I was like, damn, it was like, had I failed Calc 2, it would have drastically changed the rest of my life, because I would have had to repeat it Calc 2, and that would have delayed everything else by at least a semester. And I probably never would have been able to get the job I finally got after college and whatnot. And years and years and years later, I found the professor on Facebook, and I messaged her. And I was like, "I know this is going to be awkward, and I understand if you don't remember." And I explained, I was like, "Do you by any chance remember the year your father passed away? And I was in your class, and I remember I was not doing well in your class, and I was quite surprised I got a B." And later on the next semester, after I'd already gotten 100 on my first Calc 3 test, I was told that it was possible I had failed Calc 2. I was on a list of students who failed. Do you by any chance remember? I mean, it was a 1 in a billion chance she'd remember, but she never wrote back. She did write back the first time. She remembered me, but then when I asked her the question, she never wrote back. So I don't know. I suspect that she was in a bad emotional state and perhaps misfilled out the grade or something, and that I probably should have failed Calc 2, but for whatever reason, I didn't. And I proved myself in Calc 1. I proved myself in Calc 3 at a perfect average in Calc 3. Now, the only problem was the highest grade you could get at Hofstra was an A. You couldn't get an A+. So it was another semester of all A's. In fact, yeah, my third semester was just all A's across the board. And so, as semester added on, and I had all A's, and all A's and a B, all A's and an A-, all A's and a B+. Okay, I got maybe I started to convince myself that even if I did fail, it wasn't my fault I failed. It was the professor's fault, because all these other professors, they could teach me just fine. I kind of wish she had answered. I'll never really know at this point. But I always suspect that I wasn't supposed to pass Calc 2, but I did. Then there was one class, an engineering class, engineering circuit design class. And at this point, my engineering teachers already knew my GPA, and so they already expected me to do well on tests. And so one test, like the teacher gave us a quiz, and I was the first person to hand it in. I got it totally wrong. I totally forgot one thing he taught us. I skipped over something, completely messed up the entire test. What did he do? He looked at the test. He saw I put it in. He saw how wrong I was. He canceled the test for everybody because he said, if Joe got it wrong, clearly I didn't teach it correctly. And he canceled the test and he retaught the lesson. And we retook the test the next time. And that was the point in college where I realized I don't think I could fail even if I tried to. And at that point is when I really just started doing 80% of the work to get, 90% of the grade. I didn't care about those last 10 points. And it was fine. I mean, it was fun. It let me strike a social balance. But I knew some people who would study for hours and hours and hours to get that 95 or 100. And I was content with getting a 90, which was still an A. Just the way it was in college. I don't know what happened, but again, in chemistry, I thought I got the worst grade. I ended up breaking the curve. Things like that. I couldn't fail in college. Then, unfortunately, life situations going on. BirdOPrey had gotten hurt at work and wasn't working, and then he had some legal issues, and we needed money. I thought I would go on to graduate school because I was a pretty good student, but we needed money, and I didn't particularly. I was okay. I was okay entering the workforce, so I put out. I was like, okay, well, if I'm lucky, a starting electrical engineer salary at the time, a good engineering salary would be like $45,000 a year, and that would have come in handy. So I interviewed at quite a few places, and they were all big engineering firms, and there was Underwriters Laboratory and some other systems, and they had these big, giant office buildings out in Long Island, and you had rows and rows and rows of cubicles with some hundreds of engineers on the floor, and you were basically just interviewing to be one of the hundreds of engineers the company had. And it would have been okay, but it wasn't calling to me. So, also, I managed through college to kind of keep up on doing my own web pages since I had started dabbling with them in high school. So by the time college came around, now Monster.com had really just started maybe a year or two before I graduated, and it was still pretty new. So I put a resume on Monster.com, but I also put a link to my own web page where I had made my own copy of my resume. And I had a picture of myself in the top corner, a professional picture. In fact, I think I just scanned the picture that was off of my college ID because I actually always liked it. It was actually funny thing. It wasn't my college ID as a student. It was my college ID as a professor, because the last year of college, they hired me for the continuing education department. So I was teaching like third graders how to work computers. But I had a letter on Hofstra, a paper letterhead that said I was an employee. And even though we were not supposed to be able to do this, I remembered that, hey, the first day of classes, they all have students working everything and they don't know the rules. So I took my Hofstra framed ID and they, frankly, I was already, older looking. My hair was getting a little, what's that word? Thin, a little thin. And so I was like, well, if I could look like this, I might as well take advantage of it. So I go up and very serious looking, and I would go because students and professors both got their IDs from the same office. So I go into the office. There's some, students that are probably working there their first day. And I said, hello, I'm Mr. DiBiase. And I gave them my letter. I was like, I need an ID. So they went ahead and they printed up an ID that said faculty on it. And then I took the ID that said faculty and I went across campus to the public safety department and I showed them my faculty ID and they gave me faculty parking passes, which were just stickers that I could put on my Jeep so I could park in the faculty parking lot. So that was awesome. Like my senior year, I was parking in the faculty lot. But anyway, my faculty ID picture was my favorite picture of all my IDs. So I think I just scanned that and used that as like my, photo for my resume. But I coded into it that if you mouse over the photo, it changed from the professional looking, full face shot frame to, excuse me, a scanned photo I had of myself playing an inflatable saxophone with those big sunglasses that I'd taken, I don't know, at like one of the family parties, maybe a Sweet 16 or I don't know what. But, a party where they gave out sunglasses and the plastic leis and everything. So I was like, yeah. So it was like to show that, hey, I had a sense of humor. And so when I got hired for Sidney Frank Importing, when I got the call to interview at Sidney Frank Importing Company, which I had never heard of, but they were in New Rochelle. Yes, the same New Rochelle that is currently in containment because of the virus. So they were up in New Rochelle. And they said, we're a Sidney Frank Importing Company. You might know our brands. We import Jägermeister. And honestly, I didn't know what Jägermeister was because I was not a big drinker. So I looked up the company and I typed in Sydney, S-Y-D-N-E-Y, because I didn't even realize Sydney could be a name, S-I-D-N-E-Y. But luckily there was one newspaper who misspelled the name with the Y, but in that same article they correctly, now this wasn't Google, this must have been Yahoo or something. So they correctly spelled it with the S-I-D. So then I searched for it with S-I-D and then I found a whole bunch more news articles. And the first thing I found out about the company is that it at the time had settled the largest sexual harassment lawsuit in New York State history. That was the thing that they were in the newspapers for. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. But then when I actually went there and I interviewed, it was surreal. Because you knew at this time you weren't allowed to smoke in buildings. Even at this time, you weren't allowed to be smoking in buildings. But I go in to interview, and there's this old man at the end of this very big table that you see in movies, like a conference table you see in movies with the head guy at the end and people in all the seats around. And I come into the opposite end. And this guy is sitting there in a pink sport jacket with a red bow tie, smoking the biggest cigar I've ever seen. And he says, "I are the engineer." I was like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "So, can you cook?" I was like, "What? Can I cook?" I was like, I didn't know what he was at. Like, can I cook? I was like, I can cook eggs. I can do toast and maybe a grilled cheese. He's like, oh, you're Italian. Can you cook pasta sauce? I was like, It's like I can manage a sauce. I told him. I was like, it's not something I do, but I could do a pasta sauce, I guess, if I had to. I was very weirded out by these questions. I mean, certainly was not supposed to ask me because I'm Italian. Could I cook pasta sauce? I knew that much. Then he says, so do you golf? Do you golf? And honestly, I didn't. I was like, no. I was like, a mini golf. I said, mini golf. And he's like, huh? And then like one of the people who was later I realized was his like VP in turn ended up being the CEO, like leaned in to explain to him what mini golf was. And he's like, He's like, so no. I was like, yeah, no, I don't golf. He's like, well, do you know anything about engineering? So I said, okay, well, I'd like to think I do. I, graduated, blah, blah, blah. And I did my senior design project on this. And I saw that you guys designed, it was called the Jägermeister tap machine. And it was one of the things he was proud of. He was actually listed as an inventor of it. There's a patent for a Jägermeister tap machine, and he's listed as the inventor, even though he didn't do the inventing. He just hired people to invent it. But still, when you have money, that's what you can do. So I said, I noticed you guys have the Jägermeister tap machine, and one of the things I worked on in my senior design involved thermoelectric cooling, and I was wondering if you guys ever considered going to thermoelectric cooling. This might be an application where it could be, very useful instead of using a condenser, a compressor, instead of using a compressor. And he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So he tells, he hits the button and he tells his secretary to call up the other guy, the other engineer. So this other guy comes up and he looks like, he's very proper. He's wearing a suit and tie. Nobody else is really wearing a suit or tie. He's wearing a suit and tie. And he comes up. He's an older guy, older than me at the time. I was 20, and he was, 45 or something. Probably not much older than me now, but he was an older guy. And he tells me, he said, tell him what you told me. So okay. I was like, I saw you guys do the tap machines, and I know you guys, I learned a little bit this thermoelectric cooling, and I thought it could possibly be used in your machines in place of the compressor. It would lower the weight. It could lower the noise, and blah, 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 blah. And he said, yeah, Sydney. He's like, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. That's something we did consider. For whatever reasons, we didn't do it, but yeah, that's all right. He's got it all right. So he told the guy, thank you. He let him leave. So he looks at me and he's like, so, when can you start? And we hadn't talked about salary. We hadn't talked about anything. I didn't know why they even wanted me at this point. I was like, I'm not sure. I'd like to talk it over with my family first. He's like, family. He's like, okay, take some time, talk it over with your family. And then they let me go, and they took me into the secretary's office where I met with a couple other people. And she's like, oh, Mr. Sidney, even his name was Sidney Frank. Mr. Sidney really liked you. So, blah, blah, blah. She's like, you can start on Wednesday. I think this was a Thursday or a Friday, so they wanted me to start the following Wednesday. I was like, I didn't tell him. I told him I needed some time to talk it over with my family. She's like, yeah. She's like, but here's the thing. He expects you to start on Wednesday. So we're going to tell him you took the job. If you don't show up on Wednesday, you don't show up on Wednesday. It's like, okay. She's like, so how much do you want to make? I was like, well, I put in the resume, I was looking for 45 to 48,000. And she's like, okay, 48,000. And then I was like, wow. I was like, oh my God, 48,000. That would probably make me the highest paid electrical engineer right out of Hofstra at the time. So I was quite proud of myself. And then she's like, okay, you also get a car allowance. How much is your car payment? And I was like, oh, it's $300, whatever, $49, whatever it was. She's like, okay, so $349 a month. So I figured that, and that was almost another $5,000-$6,000 a month because they were paying for my car too, a year. $5,000-$6,000 a year, right? Because they were paying for my car too. Like, holy shit! Now I'm not really making 48. I'm making like 53, which was crazy. And so I was super happy. And then they told me that basically they wanted me to work on some type of bottle. He wanted to have a movie play on a bottle, but they didn't have a lot of details yet. So I was, okay, fine. So I don't remember if I talked to Sophie. I guess I did, but I was like, I guess we're good. I'm taking this job because they're paying me, more than anybody else was going to offer. And frankly, I was kind of like the fact that they weren't by the book. I really enjoyed the fact they weren't by the book. That we had a guy smoking, asking me all types of ridiculous questions, and everybody there seemed to, and they told me, so this is why I said it. They told me you need, this was in the office after he interviewed me, they're like, listen, you need a sense of humor to work here. You can get a lot out of this place, but there's going to be days where he's going to change his mind, and something you work 2-3 years on, he's going to say, never mind, he changed his mind, and you're going to start working on something else. Can you live with that? I was like, yeah, I could live with that. They're like, okay, it's good. Because you're like, you really need a sense of humor to work here. They're like, we knew you had a sense of humor because when we went to your resume and the mouse went over your picture and changed to you with the saxophone. I was like, yeah, well, that's true. That's why I put it in there. And so that there was why they knew I had a sense of humor and why I got called for that interview. And because of that interview, I got that job. And that job was what defined the next 10 years of my life. Traveled all around the world. Spent a lot of time in California. It turned out he went to California for half the year. They didn't tell me this at the time. I almost ended up moving out to California with them for half a year and coming back and forth. But through another strange twist of fate, I ended up becoming the exception. And I basically got to make my own hours. I was supposed to work 6 days a week. Through a strange twist of fate, it turned into 5. And then because the secretary didn't want to get caught having screwed up, she said, okay, it was always supposed to be 5 days. It was crazy. I mean, there's so much I go in this job, but just understand, it was a dream job. While Mr. Frank was alive, it was a literal dream job. And he was alive from when I started working in August 2000 or September 2000 to January of 2006. He passed away. I still worked for the company for the next 4 years. Technically, I worked for the company to the end of 2009, but I was in a coma for those last 6 months. 7 months. And it went from like an A++ to just an A type job. It was still an excellent job. But when he was alive, it was incredible. It was unbelievable. You didn't know what one day would bring. My pay doubled. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into super details, but yeah, within the first year, my pay doubled. I wasn't expecting it to go like that, but apparently Mr. Frank was a very generous man. And hell, I was only there 3 months, and he was giving me a substantial Christmas bonus. That was, for me, I mean, it was like 20% of my salary. It was crazy. I'd never seen a check that big, and it was my Christmas bonus. And they were like, "And you were only there?" I was only there 3 months. And I was getting a Christmas bonus. That was huge. And I mean, he was just a very generous guy. And there was tension. I'll be honest. There was a lot of tension between the people who worked in the office and the people who worked directly for Mr. Frank. And I was the one person who played both, who got the best of both worlds, because I was based out of the office. I respected everybody in the office as if they were my boss, but the only person who was really my boss was Mr. Frank, who wasn't even in the office half the year. So I almost had free reign, but I respected everybody, and they respected me. So even after he passed away, every single other person that worked for him directly was let go with a severance, but let go. And I stayed on. I was the sole person to stay on. And so even after he passed away, though, people looked at me like I had no boss. I was my own. I literally could do almost anything I wanted. It was crazy. I worked for 4 or 5 years, and anything I wanted to do, I did. I wanted to go to Arizona to go to our Southwest Regional Meeting Conference. I did. And I brought in a friend, too, at some point. She had started in the PR department, and she got moved up to the Mr. Frank specialty team. And then she became the understudy of the secretary who Mr. Frank gave $20 million to when we sold Grey Goose Vodka in 2004. The secretary got over $20 million. When Mr. Frank passed away, the secretary retired. So my friend then became the new top secretary. And so between her, her having the ear of Mr. Frank's daughter, who became the became the chairman of the company, and the VP, who I respected, became the CEO of the company, and I could just basically do what I want. I mean, I ordered what I wanted. I had an expense account. I'd go anywhere, anything fun the company was doing, I made sure I was there. It was crazy. It was crazy, and I worked. Don't get me wrong. I worked hard. People saw me. I would work hard. It didn't matter what we had to do. If we had to move heavy boxes, I would work with the people in the mailroom, and I'd move heavy boxes. Okay. I never, and one of the guys there told me, he's like, because we had one woman who started working. It was kind of my fault. Kind of my fault. I was still new, and I was trying to make a power play to kind of take over IT, because to be honest, the person who was in charge seemed to be giving a lot of business to a consultant friend of theirs that I didn't think we needed. So I tried to make a power play. Unfortunately, while Mr. Frank said, okay, we don't need this person, then he tried to cut her out. Instead of giving it to me, he brought in another woman who was just the daughter of a friend of his, who he asked, oh, does she know how to use computers? And the father, who was like 90 years old, said, yeah, she uses a computer every day at work. And she became the IT department head for like a year, until I finally, I don't want to say I got rid of her, but I did not make her life easy. I kind of feel bad, but she had no business accepting a job she had no understanding of. She had nothing to do with IT. She was like either, I don't know if she was human resources or I think she was a writer or something. She just happened to use a computer, and her dad knew Mr. Frank, so she got a job as head of IT department, and she had zero business being there. So we got her to quit. We got her to resign. And once she resigned, things kind of returned to normal a little bit. But then I got my friend to be named director of IT, and I got myself named director of technology. So that was cool. That was like my one misstep, but I fixed it. I fixed the problem. It was weird. I mean, she came with us to France once because we were Grey Goose was expanding like crazy, and we were making software that was going to let our computers talk with the computers in France. And so I don't know how I ended up on a plane with her and our company controller. Which, don't get me wrong, I loved my company. He was a nice guy, but man, I mean, he was a bean counter. Well, he was not. I mean, you think of going somewhere fun, he would not be on your top 10 or top 20 or top 30 of people. Oh yeah, let's go. I was like, oh, and she wouldn't be on any. She wouldn't even be in the top 100. I was like, oh damn, this is going to be and then we got to France. We had no idea how to use the tickets. We had the ticket. You land in Charles de Gaulle or whatever it is, airport. You get right on the train. And we had these tickets, and they were all booked by like the company travel agency. And we didn't know we were supposed to scan them manually before we got on the train. We only found out later that we would have gotten in trouble had they actually come around and checked the tickets and saw they weren't scanned, because by not scanning the ticket, we could have used the ticket anytime. We could have used it over again. But we got on this train. There's 3 of us, and we had assigned seating. So we go to this like small cabin, and there's one guy in there, and we're like, he doesn't speak English, and nobody I was with spoke any other language but English. And so we're trying to tell him that when we showed him the paperwork, finally he understood and he got out. The 3 of us sat there for, I don't know, like 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't know. We were quite a while. We had to go to the Champagne region from Paris. You take the trip, and once we get there, we got this other guy who worked for the company who was meeting us out there. And this guy, oh my God, this guy was a weasel. I don't say, but all I'd heard him described as was a weasel. I'd never met the guy before. All I know though is he had this Audi that was not particularly roomy, but Jesus Christ, did he drive that thing fast. I couldn't tell how fast he was going because I couldn't see the speedometer, but it felt like we were doing 95 miles an hour. To this road. Now, granted, it was a pretty flat and straight highway, but it was raining. There were trucks around, and I did not like other people driving. Okay, well, that's why I always like to drive. I always like to drive. When we were home, I would always be the driver. It's very hard for me to accept someone else driving, and this guy was just zooming. And I mean, it's France. The cars are small. The trucks are small, but they're still big. But they're smaller than they're supposed to be. And we were speeding through in the rain. I was like, this is not good. I almost got sick. We got there. I was like, we passed the McDonald's like 20 miles back. I was like, son of a bitch. I'm never going to be able to find my way back there. I didn't have any car. I didn't have anything. They showed us to a small hotel. I could barely fit through the door of this hotel to get into the room. And so we had the appointment at like 9 a.m. next morning. We're all jet lagged. And so at like 8:30, we said we'll all meet in the main area of the hotel. They have their free continental breakfast or whatever. So 8:30, me and the guy, the controller, were there. 8:30, 8:45. This other woman never comes down. We don't know her room. She didn't tell us her room. I mean, I didn't think to tell anybody my room number. We didn't know anything, honestly. We didn't have her phone number. We didn't have her room number. I mean, we could have probably asked the front desk to call her or something, but we didn't speak French. So we just said, okay, I guess we just got to go. I mean, she's an adult. She'll find her way over there. So we go, we start the meeting. We're like 2 hours into this meeting, and she finally shows up. Now, I didn't report the fact that she didn't show up late to the meeting, but somebody did. And she lost a lot of respect after. I mean, the whole point, they flew her out just for this meeting. It was only like a 4-hour meeting, and she missed half. And we flew out like a last-minute trip. So it was quite expensive airline flight, business class airline flight to Paris and back, just for this trip. And then she oversleeps and misses half the meeting, which was just as well because she doesn't know anything anyway. I was the only one who needed to be there for it, but whatever. I feel bad for her, but I don't, because she, like I said, she had no business taking a job she had no experience at. A lot of things. I mean, I could go on and on and on about my job, but so in 2009, things could not be going better at my job. I had bought my house 4 years earlier in 2005. I bought this house. I was a single guy. BirdOPrey5 was living here. I moved him in because he had some health issues. And yes, BirdOPrey5 and BirdOPrey5 were separated at the time. So BirdOPrey5 moved into here. Now my plan was I set up this house. The basement of the house was set up as an apartment. It has its own kitchen, its own bathroom, its own bedroom, and it has no steps. And a living room, yes, its own living room too. No steps. You come in down the ramp that goes to the garage. You have to step over a couple of things, so I can't wheelchair into it. But there's no actual steps you have to step up or step down. So it would have been really easy for BirdOPrey5 to get in, because BirdOPrey5 had his back problems and whatnot, so sometimes steps weren't great for him. And the thought was he would live down there. I would live up here. I mean, when he was feeling good, he could come up. We could have dinner together. We could hang out. I could go downstairs, whatever. But we'd have bedrooms on separate floors. Unfortunately, when the month came for BirdOPrey5 to move in, and he ended up in the hospital for a few weeks. So I ended up having to move everything from his apartment to my house. And then he came out of the hospital, he came to my place instead of going back to where he had been living, because the lease was up. And everything was here. So instead of putting him, his first few days out of the hospital, rather than keeping him downstairs, I kept him up here, where I could keep an eye on him closer. And so he kind of just got into the habit of him living up here in one of the extra bedrooms, rather than in the basement that I had completely made for him to be his own place. However, when I was having overnight company, he would go downstairs for the night. So, I mean, it still worked out, but never like we'd planned. And then in 2009, things had been going good at work. I was getting paid a lot more money than when I started. I had all reason to think that at least as long as the company was going, I would be okay. And things were going good. And then I got that pain. I got a pain in my abdomen. Now I'd gotten my first kidney stone at work years earlier. I ended up in the hospital with that. But the first time I had this incredible pain. I keeled over at work. Luckily, it was early in the morning. The only person there happened to be a person who used to be a nurse, and she kind of realized what it was. I realized what it was. It was right after I went to the bathroom. I peed, and I came out, and I couldn't even take a step. And she called an ambulance, and I went to the hospital, and they said, yeah, kidney stone. They gave me painkillers, whatnot, and I passed it in a day or two. And then, unfortunately, I would have kidney stones every, 6 months or a year. I'd have another stone. I'd pass another stone. So I had a history of kidney stones. And then I also had a history of back problems for various reasons. Could have been age, could have been weight, could have been the time I fell off the Jeep hood. It could have been the time I smacked into the barricade while snow tubing. It could have been anything. Could have been some rough Jeep rides. God knows what it could have been. But whatever it was, I would get back pain that would go from bad to worse to almost couldn't walk for a day or two until it calmed down. Then once I had the pain would last for months. I mean, I would know if I got this pain, it might be 3 months, 4 months, 5 months before that pain would go away. And then I'd have 3, 4, 5 good months, and then it would come back. So I didn't know if this was just that pain starting again or what it was. It turned out, though, I went to a urologist. It wasn't a kidney stone. I went to chiropractor, got muscle relaxers and everything. It wasn't going away at all. So I knew it wasn't the usual back pain. And so my primary care doctor said, well, you do have a history of high triglycerides, and it was something we were working on. In fact, I had just gotten the name of a specialist in the city that I was getting ready to call. I printed it out, and it was next to my bed, and I was going to call him in a day or two. And I started getting this pain, and he's like, you better go in and get tested for pancreatitis. So we did, and it turned out it was pancreatitis. And this was the day before Mother's Day of 2009. So just the fact that I was going to the hospital, we called BirdOPrey. I called BirdOPrey, or I think I called her. And she came right over, even though she was working as a supervisor, right? Yeah. She was a supervisor for JetBlue at Newark Airport in New Jersey. She was living in Staten Island. And she gave her keys to somebody, expecting she'd be back.
No, but I had taken the next day off.
Oh, she'd taken the next day off because it was Mother's Day. So she'd given the keys to somebody. And she expected she would be back. Yes, Sassy. And so she came in to the hospital to see me. And so it turned out, they said it was pancreatitis. I was like, it was in so much pain. But I'd been laying in a hospital bed like almost, 10 or 12 hours. And I was like, I got to get out of this bed. I can't stay in this bed. It's terrible. So I asked the nurse, and they helped me sit up in the chair, the chair they keep next to every hospital bed. So I finally, it took all my strength, and the pain was incredible, but I sat down in this chair, and immediately I was like, oh my God, this was a bad idea. Because the pain went from a 10 to like a 25. It was, oh my God. So, I don't know. I only sat for a few minutes. I was like, I got to get back into bed. And that was the last time I stood. The doctors came by later that day, said, you have a mild case of pancreatitis. There's like, what we can do is put you to sleep for a few days. The worst of the pain will be over. I thought that sounded great because I was in so much pain. So they put me to sleep. And that was that. I ended up getting a Klebsiella infection almost immediately. They had to trach me. I had got a fever, 106 fever. The fever stayed for months. I ended up in a coma. They couldn't wake me up. They couldn't get me out of it. So days turned to weeks, turned to months. I ended up, trach got pulled out of my throat because the trach has a plastic tube, and now the hospital bed I was on would rotate left to right so that I didn't build up any ulcers or pressure sores on my back. It was a high-tech hospital bed, but when you have a trach, there's supposed to be an arm that holds the tube above the hospital bed railing. And even if you see this if you watch Sopranos or whatever, Tony at the end, he's in the hospital. Anytime somebody says the tube, they've got this arm holding the tubes. For whatever reason, the hospital didn't have this arm holding the tubes, and my tube would get caught on the hospital bed railing while it was turning. So now, while Mom O'Prey or Dad O'Prey or Sis O'Prey or any members of the O'Prey family were there watching me, if it got stuck, they would lift it up so it would go. And they told the doctors and they told the nurses over and over and over and over again that, hey, this tube is getting stuck. It's a problem. You got to do something about it. And the nurses said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Then the day came. Mom O'Prey went home.
Yeah.
Mom O'Prey went home.
Aunt
O'Prey was on duty, and the nurse asked her to leave because it was their change of shift. And Aunt O'Prey listened and left, and the tube got caught on the braille and literally got pulled out of my neck. All the alarms went off, and luckily a doctor, one of the good doctors, who was there, happened to be nearby, jumped on top of me, jumped on the bed, and took the spare. Luckily, they were wise enough to keep a spare trach next to everybody's bedside who was trach, and shoved the spare trach right back in. Luckily, I got oxygen fairly quickly, but in the process, a lung collapsed and my face blew up like a balloon. And Mom O'Prey thought she took pictures of this, but she didn't. She forgot. She didn't know she had to save them. This was a very old. They called her. I mean, she came back. She thought I was done. She thought I was done. She looked at me and she thought I was gone. I wasn't going to make it. She tried to take the pictures. She didn't know that she had to hit save. This was an old flip phone. Even if she had taken the pictures, it probably would have been half a megapixel of a photograph anyway. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of photos from that time because Mama O'Prey thought she was taking photos. Even when I was good, even when she was trying to take a picture of my mountain man beard that grew in over months and months.
There were no smartphones.
Yeah, they weren't smart. There was like the first iPhone had come out like literally, I think like a month or two before I got sick. Like we had just gotten the first iPhone in the office in the weeks before I got sick for one of the top VPs because he always wanted the latest and greatest stuff. So like the first time we'd even seen an iPhone was just a few weeks prior. Mom O'Prey still had a phone that was even older, would have been old at the time, so it barely even had a camera. Like one of the
BlackBerry at work.
right, she had a BlackBerry at work, but for her home phone, she had one of the first phones that even had a camera. So we don't have many of those pictures, unfortunately. But I looked like I was done for. Luckily, it went down, I guess, over time. They had to put a drainage tube in. Some type of machine that sucked the air out or pumped something. Whatever it did, slowly I got back to normal looking. I was still in the coma. I didn't know any of this was happening. I ended up needing dialysis, and they couldn't even get the veins for the dialysis. They started moving into veins in my leg because they needed to use such a big tube, and they had to order special tubes that were super big, and the tubes were getting clogged. they were clotting and screwing up the machine, and I needed dialysis or I would die. So they just barely managed to get me dialysis. God knows how much they poked and prodded me to try to get to those veins and whatnots.
They wanted to move you to a different
Right,
hospital.
BirdOPrey, at this point, they were discussed. They wanted to move me to a better hospital. But they refused. They wouldn't allow me to be moved because once that happened to my trach, I was labeled as an unstable airway. And not only would they not move me out of the hospital, they wouldn't move me in the hospital bed. So I would spend days on my back. And when I finally did regain consciousness months later, even though I couldn't talk and I didn't have any strength to move, I had 3 big major bed sores on my back that were in terrible, terrible pain. And the morphine had basically become ineffective. And so I was literally screaming, but no one could hear me because of the trach, in torture. It's like I was being tortured. They were debriding the wound, and I could feel it. I could feel it all. It was terrible. It was awful. BirdOPrey kicked the wall, put a hole in the wall. Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. It was a long, long recovery. And I didn't want to leave the hospital because I figured, hey, I came in here walking. To me, I thought they should return me in the same condition. The doctor kept saying, oh, you'll be walking within a year.
Yeah, no, before that, he kept saying, don't worry, you'll walk out of here.
Oh, yeah. Before that, he was telling me, don't worry, I'll walk out of the hospital. So I believed him. I was naive, and I believed them at that point.
Excuse me. They told us you may never talk again. There were many things.
They said I might not talk again. I might have brain damage.
Yeah,
Things, all types of things, but they never warned them about me not being able to walk.
Right.
They were convinced I'd walk out of there. I might walk out of there unable to talk. I might walk out of there with some brain damage because they wouldn't know how badly the fever and the lack of oxygen hit me. But the first day I could talk and they were asking me questions. They were like, who's the president? And I knew at the time it was Obama. And BirdOPrey was thinking it was still George Bush. She's like, oh my God, he's right. It's Obama. She thought it was still George W. Bush. She was out of it. I mean, who was the vice president? And honestly, questions I can't even answer now sometimes. But they asked a whole bunch of questions. I got them all right. So they were pretty sure I didn't have brain damage. Pretty sure. Though BirdOPrey thinks it did slow me down a little. Which is probably true. Anyway, in the hospital, there was a day where this a-hole doctor decided that he used to be a Marine or something. So he was going to do like tough love type shit. And he was like, he used to work he was a Marine and he used to work in a burn ward of I guess the VA or something. So he was used to dealing with other Army and military people. He's like, you got to do this. You got to do this. You gotta sit up. If you don't sit up now, you're never going to sit up. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, I have 3 stage 4 bed sores. They are fucking pains like you can't believe. He's like, no, you're doing this. He got like 6 people to start to raise me. I was like, no, I refuse. Now for months, maybe weeks, I've been awake. I mean, I could see every time they moved me around the hospital, everywhere in the hospital it says big notice, Patient's Bill of Rights by New York State. New York State Patient's Bill of Rights. And like right number 2 was you have the right to refuse treatment. So I said, no, I'm refusing treatment. I'm refusing treatment. I can see it on the Patient's Bill of Rights. I'm refusing this treatment. And BirdOPrey, who was there with me, who was also my healthcare proxy, just in case they wanted to say, well, I wasn't in my sane state of mind, because they had given me some type of painkiller. She also said, no, he's refusing the treatment. Don't do it. And they ignored us both. And I said, I will sue you and you and you and you if you do this. And like these doctors all hesitated and they looked at the main doctor and he shook his head and said, no, he can't. And so they did it. They followed his orders. And I was in the most pain I could ever be in. It was so much pain I couldn't even scream. It was terrible. It was horrible. Oh my God, just thinking about it. I was like, what did I do? I thought I was being punished. I was like, what? I asked her, what did I do that I don't have any rights? I was like, this was crazy, and it hurt so much. And that was the day after they stopped, and a nurse came over, a nurse who was complicit. She was complicit. And she came over afterwards and asked if there's anything I can do. And I could barely move my finger, my arm, and my fingers weren't working. And like I lifted my arm just a slight bit, and I was like, bring your face over here. Like, what? She's like, no, is there anything I can do? I was like, bring your face over here so I can punch it. I was serious too. She did not. She did not do as I requested. It was bad. It was bad. Anyway, so the hospital finally decides that I ended up we moved from ICU to a regular room. Finally, after almost 8 months, spent another 3 months in a regular room. Then the hospital said they were kicking us out. They're like, you got to go to a rehab. We've done everything we can do for you here. But no rehab would take me. No rehab wanted to take me. BirdOPrey and BirdOPrey, I guess, found one rehab that would take me if and only if I paid cash. And at that point, we just wanted out of the hospital because I honestly thought they would kill me. If they couldn't get me out, they were probably just going to do something to kill me. So luckily, I had a sizable 401k that we ended up having to liquidate and cost how much a month?
I went in there with a check for $30,000.
BirdOPrey gave him a check for $30,000. Covered 1 month, 2 months. 2 months. And then
they couldn't help you.
They couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything. After 2 months in there, the the head of the physical therapy, which I could barely go down for physical therapy because I was still in so much pain from the bed sore, and I had nothing was working to kill the pain. So the head of physical therapy said, listen, Joe, there's nothing I can do for you here that you can't get done at home. So we made the decision to come back to my house and continue physical therapy here. So we had to end up buying a hospital bed. This hospital bed, which is now 10 years old and cost $27,000. We had to buy this hospital bed for $27,000 back in 2010. Came into this hospital bed. Well, actually, they replaced it after about a month because the first one was a lemon. So this hospital bed, but more or less, been on this hospital bed now for 10 years. We continued the physical therapy 5 days a week, with the head of the physical therapy from the nursing home was coming to my house after work to keep up the physical therapy. We were private paying him for years. And then Camille, we knew Camille. We got to know Camille. She was the most helpful person at at the rehab center I was at. Yeah, and so she would come 7 days a week for an hour to hour and a half at a time to help BirdOPrey, help me, because at the time we needed 2 people to turn me. We needed 2 people. the first couple of years, I had no strength still. After a few years, I built up some strength. I started being able to help turn myself and things. So, instead of needing 2 people to wash me and 2 people to move me, eventually we got it down to BirdOPrey being able to do it by herself. And over time, frankly, we didn't have the money. And the doctors we saw later on said there's really no reason to be doing 5 days a week physical therapy. So we dropped it down and dropped it down again. But every doctor who told me, oh, you'll be walking in a year. And when a year came, oh, you'll be walking in 2. So everything we made in this house, all the changes that were made in this house. Now understand, when I got sick, the day before I got sick, it was me and BirdOPrey living here. Then I spent a year in the hospital in the rehab. When I came home, it was BirdOPrey, BirdOPrey, SisOPrey, and 2 beagles. 2 beagles. Not you, Sassy. SisOPrey had Charlie Dog, and BirdOPrey had Rebel. So I moved back into my own house that now had 3 other adults and 2 dogs. And what used to be my living room now became basically my everything. That's where my hospital bed has been. My master bedroom is down the other side of the house. I've looked in it and from my wheelchair, but I haven't even been in that master bedroom in 11 years now because my wheelchair doesn't fit through the door. So luckily, I mean, when I was having the house, when I first bought the house, I had a lot of it redone. And what used to be all individual rooms, the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, I all opened up into one kind of great room, which was exactly what Mr. Frank did in his house. And he actually lived in a hospital bed too, but he was 80-something years old. And he literally had 4 private nurses. So he could do that. I didn't. But we cathedraled the ceiling. So luckily, instead of having an 8-foot ceiling right above me, I have like a 12-foot ceiling going to 14-foot. So it's actually not a terrible place to be. I mean, it was quite lucky that my uncle said, hey, I think we could make this ceiling a cathedral ceiling. And I listened to him because, oh my God, if I still had this house like it was originally, I feel like I'd be living in a jail cell. The walls would be on each side of me and in front of me and behind me, and I wouldn't be able to see anything. Right now I can see the dining room, I can see the kitchen, I can see down the hall, I can see an extra room we have. I feel like I'm part of everything going on because I can see everything. So that was a happy mistake that the house worked out like that. But all the decisions we made, from the flooring, from the cars we sold and we bought. I had a car that I was leasing at an absurd. They paid the lease of this car. It was a QX. What was it? Not an Infinity. An Infinity QX56. It was how much? It was $900 and change a month lease. Now understand, I was getting a car allowance, not for the full 900, but I was getting a car allowance and I was getting paid a shit ton of money. So I had this $900 plus lease for an Infinity QX56. Beautiful, beautiful, biggest truck, interior. I felt so comfortable. I love taking this thing on road trips. Only got a chance to take it on a few, though, because I got sick. We paid that lease for months, thinking maybe one day I'd get to drive it again. Or even if I couldn't get to drive it, fine, we gave it back. We didn't even think to look at the lease. It was only when I was bringing the lease back and I read the paperwork of the lease, did it say that, oh, if you had a permanent disability, that's one of the things that they would break the lease. You could break the lease early. They would have taken it back. I could have saved thousands and thousands. I could have saved $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 had I read that. Had I read that, we could have given that back early. As it was, they got back a QX56 that I had paid in advance to put 30,000 or 40,000 miles on with like 10,000 miles. They were so happy to get this car back. They got this, they were like, cha-ching! It was the best thing ever for them to get that car back with so few miles. They were over the moon. Was just something we didn't think about. No, I didn't think about I could break the lease. Didn't think it would even be an option, but it would have been had I read it. So like the car we bought, the van we bought for me, every decision we make was based on this was being a temporary thing. So we frankly wasted a lot of money on things that only needed to work for a year or two. But then turned out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're now going on 10 years. We would have done so many things different. Had we known, had they just told us that we're looking at potentially a long-term situation, we would have done things a lot different. What were you saying, Mom?
No, they need the equipment that
equipment that we purchased and whatnot.
was too small for you.
Oh, yeah, we bought something that was just too small for me. I mean, we didn't know. We had no idea that the lifts weren't made for people 6'4" with size 15 shoes. And then, of course, they wouldn't take it back because it was medical equipment. Was it? You buy it, you bought it. It's done.
We're not talking $50.
No, it was $1,000. Yeah, it was $1,000 piece of equipment. That was one of the cheapest things we ever bought,
Yeah.
medical-wise. Anyway, guys, let me, I'll play a commercial. I'll be back in a little bit, and I'll look if there's any questions. I'll be right back.
Jordache has the fit that's right. The Jordache look. The Jordache look.
You're feasting your eyes on the 6-meal cake. Streusel Swirl from Pillsbury. Meal number 1, a fancy feast for your company. Number 2, a yummy dessert for your kids. 3, a breakfast cake to make you forget coffee cake. 4, a lunchbox cake that doesn't all stick to the wrapping. 5, the best break a coffee break ever had. 6, dessert the second night, still firm and fresh. Streusel Swirl, the sensational 6-meal cake.
The Jordan Marsh Super Sale is on.
Super!
This is the place for spectacular store-wide savings.
Super!
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday only. Save 25 to 50% on selected fashions, accessories, housewares, and more.
Super!
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. 3 days of sizzling savings of 25 to 50%. The Super Sale at Jordan Marsh is on.
This is the place, Jordan Marsh.
One Day at a Time has moved. The craziest cast of characters in some of their zaniest adventures ever. Now come to you in the morning at a brand new time. Anything goes, and it usually does. So be sure to watch us, because it all happens
One day at a
Now
time.
at 10 Eastern, 9 Central and Pacific.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you guys saw the beginning of KFC commercial. Sorry about that. Anyway, just for the triglycerides that were the cause of all this, we believe. My triglycerides when I went into the hospital were 5,600, which was a number that they couldn't believe. They tested and retested and retested. They tested 3 times. 5,600 was one of the highest triglyceride numbers they'd ever seen. In fact, in Googling, yes, there were people with higher numbers, but very few. You had to Google the entire planet to find people with higher numbers. And no, it couldn't have been from diet. Diet, yes, people have high triglycerides from diet. Maybe they have 500, 600, 700 because of bad diet. Once you get into the multi-thousands, that's not from diet. That's from your body producing triglycerides when it's not supposed to. So that's it. And I used, let's say 5,000 was the highest I'd ever seen it. But when I would get my monthly blood test, because I was, keeping on top of it, maybe it was twice every 2 months or something, usually be between 1,000 and 2,000. And it had been between 1,000 and 2,000 since I was a kid. When I was 8 years old, it was 920 something. And the doctor hoped I would just grow out of it. He didn't want to give me medication at the time. Then later I started medications, but to be quite honest, the medications didn't seem to do anything. I take medications, it would get to 1,100. I'd take a next month, it would be back up to 2,000. Then it would go back to 1,500, and it would go up to 21. I was like, well, my point is taking these medications? It doesn't seem to be doing anything. So in my admission, I did stop taking the medication, but also the medication didn't seem to be doing anything except making me feel like shit. So, yeah, then I ended up with 5,600, which was crazy and very, very likely the source of the pancreatitis. Now, people are like, oh, because usually when people say you got pancreatitis, the most usual way is from drinking, is from alcoholism. But I didn't drink. I mean, I drank with my company, but realistically, I drank a lot less than most people. Occasionally, we'd have weekends where we drink a lot, but I hadn't drank in months before I'd gotten sick, so it certainly wasn't from drinking. It was triglycerides. Oh. Yeah. Okay, guys. I feel like there is so much more, but I could talk for more hours and hours and hours. Yeah, I'm going to read chats. That's what my phrase. I'm going to read chat. I'm going to go back. Okay, so the first chat that has @BirdOPrey5 on it, I don't know how long ago it was, but it's from number one. Sci-Fi says, BirdOPrey, did his arm taste good to you? I don't remember how his arm tasted. I don't think it tasted good. That was way back where I said I got kicked out of preschool for biting the kid's arm because he was an a-hole and he skipped me in line. Kronos says, is this where Bird tells us how he was bitten by a radioactive dodo bird that gave BirdOPrey his superpowers? No, that was not the origin story. If the origin story of the name I did tell, BirdOPrey. Wow, number one Sci-Fi. BirdOPrey. And he still says Star Trek. Bird created his own language too, says Epic Beard. Not really my own language. Joe Lau says Bird cheating starts young. Well, again, I felt like she was wasting my time. So I knew it was cheating, but I didn't feel bad about it. Shronmore says, greetings, BirdOPrey, MamaPrey, and fellow nerds. Greetings, Shronmore. Number one sci-fi, excuse me, says, send caterpillars to BirdOPrey. He needs them. No caterpillars. Kronos says, BirdOPrey, when you have nothing else to do, just wet them, indeed. Number one sci-fi says, man, caterpillars are BirdOPrey's kryptonite. Not anymore. But at the time, I was allergic. Number one sci-fi says, BirdOPrey, you should have peed on the caterpillar. Good one. Josh Street says, why is there BirdOPrey talking about on BirdOPrey5 XXX? Or is this Bird talking about the porno? No, this has nothing to do with pornography. Yes, I had a teacher who spelled it that way. Cookies, yeah. Oh yeah, I told the cookie story. And Yosef is spelling it the wrong way, Yosef. I don't care what Merriam-Webster says. It was the Astor program. It was named after the rich family, the Astors, who gave money to the city for it. But then when they stopped giving money, the city's like, well, fuck you. We're not going to keep it named after you. So they changed it from Aster to Astral. Joseph says, Bird is gifted. Everybody remember. Yeah. Kronos hated public school. Birdie's got a gun. BirdOPrey5. Wow. Number one sci-fi is Bird of Prey. You're a Scorpio. No wonder you sting everyone. Yeah, I am a Scorpio. Number one sci-fi is Bird of Prey. Check your AOL mail after this stream. I will. In fact, I have before. Sci-Fi Nation says, greetings, Bird of Prey, Mao Prey, Sassio Prey, and fellow nerds. Hail Karoga. I really enjoyed having you on my stream today. Let's do it again sometime. Just listening in while trying to get some rest. Very cool, Sci-Fi Nation. Thank you. Yeah, I would do it again. When it works out, like a day like today, it worked out. Most days, I'd probably have more time at the time you started your stream, but today was unusual because Camille, couldn't make it. Josh reads his Bird of Prey, so Dad of Prey got you into the family business. Yes, you could say that. Miss Londell says, sounds like she graded with one hell of a curve. Josh reads his Bird of Prey, dear Sassy, dear Sassy. We don't do dear Sassy. Joe Lau says 1,000 plus people in U.S. infected and 31 deaths. That is not many cases. Well, it's only 1,000 plus infected because they only tested a few thousand people. They don't have hundreds of thousands of test kits.
They're not testing.
They're not testing anyone. I mean, like Ciso Prey had a cold, and they said no. They just said it's a cold. Go home. And Anti-Trigger said he went to the doctor, and there were big signs that say if you think you have the virus, don't come in the office. Yeah, signs in the hospital. If you think you have it, don't come here. Like, what the hell? What the hell? Epic Beard says more cheating. Wow. What was that in regards to? That wasn't cheating. No, I didn't cheat at the interview. It wasn't a fake ID. I was an employee of the school. I just wasn't supposed to use that letter to get a faculty. I wasn't considered faculty. So I wasn't supposed to use that letter to get a faculty pass. And then I wasn't supposed to use that faculty pass to get faculty parking. But I was employed by the school. Why should I not be entitled to what every other school employee was entitled to do just because I happened to be a student? F them. That was an act of civil disobedience. Yeah. No, it wasn't a fake faculty ID. I mean, it was a real ID. Once they gave it to me, it was very real. A fake ID is you go to someplace else and you have them make an ID that's fake. If you go to the place that gives out the IDs and they give you the ID, it's real. It's a real ID. There's nothing fake about it. See, that's where the genius come in. Now, if I faked the ID, that would be wrong. But I just went to the source and I got the real ID. Kronos is Bird of Prey, so apparently you did very well on casting couch. No, I was never on a casting couch. Kronos says, I thought we were the ones dreaming up a thing called BirdOPrey5X. The more you know. Kronos says, you made someone quit Bird. Was a baseball bat involved? No, but we changed. She put her. She didn't know what to do with herself because she didn't know what to do. So her icons on her desktop included Minesweeper and Solitaire. So the 2B IT director and myself went in from the back end and changed her icon so when she clicked on Solitaire or Minesweeper, it opened up monster.com. It was, passive-aggressive type stuff. When one time we were all being called to a meeting for the guy who'd become the CEO. And we knew she never remembered to go to these meetings. And like the IT guy's office was here, her office was here, and my office was here. Now, maybe 15 or 20 minutes before, I came out of my office, walked past her office this way, and went into the IT guy's office, and we hung out until the meeting started. Now, we would come out, and logic would say we would have passed her office to get to the CEO's office. But as we walked out of the office, I put my arm and I stopped the IT guy from going past her office. I shook my head, didn't say anything, and we went the opposite way. We went the long way around, and because it was basically like a big circle almost. It was a rectangle. So we went all the way around the other way to come to the CEO's office without passing her office, so that she didn't notice we were headed there. And then me and him were sitting in the CEO's office, and he's like, "Where's so-and-so?" I don't know. We're here. And so then he calls her office, like, "We had a meeting that was supposed to start 5 minutes ago." And she runs over. Things like that. Things like that. She got the point. Technically, I didn't do anything wrong. Okay? All I said is we should take the long way around. Maybe I just wanted to exercise. I feel a little bad. I do. I feel a little bad, but it was, listen, this was people's livelihoods we were dealing with here, and I would have felt more bad if her failure to understand the situation could have costed us jobs or something, or God forbid, the company get hacked or something. So I felt it was hard. It was hard decisions, but I felt I was in the right. If Kronos' Bird ever comes out with an audio biography, I'm sure it'll be over 30 books. Just for kindergarten. Yeah, I did spend a long time. I'm sorry. Bird is a control freak, confirmed. Oh, absolutely, DJ. I don't even deny it. I am a control freak. But I need that control because I don't trust anyone. I trust people in my family to a point. But
Thank you.
BirdOPrey I trust, obviously. BirdOPrey was the one person he could drive, and I wouldn't never worry. Not until we got on that boat that time. And he started saying, "I'm following the GPS." I was like, "No, that's the shoreline." Up until that point in my life, I trusted Dad's ability to drive without question. But that was it. That was it. Otherwise, Mom drove too quite a bit. I mean, she would get a little nervous. She would yell a lot more at other drivers than Dad. But she still got us everywhere safely without incident. Even when she turned onto oncoming traffic once, yeah. Richie Poole says, "Oh, wait a minute, I forgot the X. Hello, BirdOPrey X. Oh, welcome, Richie Poole. I don't know if he's still here. This was hours ago.
Well, if he's still there, just
BirdOPrey is wondering if you got the box, Richie, if you're still there. It said delivered. Let's see. Maybe Richie Poole said something we forgot to put in the X. He forgot to put in right. He said, "Hello, BirdOPrey5. No, okay. That seems to be what he said. Welcome, Richie. Orville Nation says, "Bird is a great storyteller." Oh, Orville Nation, Qapla. I hope maybe next week we can get into that stream. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you also. I mean, I just think, I don't think I'm a good storyteller. I have a lot to tell. And people apparently want to listen. Josh Street, is that why Bird isn't taking a nap, or is Picard not? Oh shit, oh my god, it's already 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah, we might as well just stay.
I can't stay up.
Oh, sure. Who's going on next?
I can't stay up. Grizzly O'Prey. I had this great mountain man looking beard. Everybody was talking about how great it was. It came in red. It came in red. It was a ginger. I had a ginger beard before it went white. All the white hairs used to be red. Yeah, I had a ginger red beard. Apparently, jet black hair, but ginger red beard. No, my hair is jet black.
Wow, we should have had them check your eyes.
Wow. Kronos is here. We were born to be kings. We are the princes of the universe. Good soundtrack. I don't know. Infinity, luxury to the max. Carlos is BirdOPrey. Happy birthday, Carlo. I think it's probably officially your birthday. Happy birthday if you're still here, Carlo. I've been here listening. Thanks for the story. God bless you, Sis Opray and Mom Opray. Thank you, Carlo, and God bless you. And in case you sneezed. Resolute, he's only 2 hours behind, so he's doing pretty good now. I told you guys at the beginning I wasn't going to read all the chats. Abig Beard says, fraud, Opray. No, fraud. Orville Nation says, sorry, had to cancel stream, BirdOPrey, but I'm glad I finally got to hear the Bop origin story. Had missed it before. No problem, Orville Nation. A lot of new people, so I wanted to get it out there. Albert Jim says, I feel bad for about 2 seconds, but then I remember that I'm a jerk. That's not what I said. He meant hair, singular, says Aberjan. Nathaniel Thorne says, BirdOPrey, this has been the best told story. Thank you for all the details. I want to hear more adventures of BirdOPrey5. Thank you, Nathaniel. I'd like to tell more stories, like especially of my times working and stuff. I think enough time has passed that I can get away with telling some of them. Carlo says, oh my God, thank you again. I can't believe you remember, but you're welcome, Carlo. You are welcome. I try to remember birthdays. I don't always do, but I try. Anyway, guys, I think that's going to be enough for tonight. I don't know how long I've been streaming. 2 hours and 7 minutes. So, yeah, at some point I will put in the stream a pinned comment, probably tomorrow or something. Maybe I'll just forget as to where the actual hospital story begins. Yeah, so that's the BirdOPrey origin story, first chapter, chapter 1. Resolute says, good story, Bird, but I prefer that we teach to the orphans. I'm sorry. Good story, BirdOPrey, but I prefer that we teach to the orphans in the mines. The orphans don't need to know all this. They just need to know how to get that sweet, sweet uranium out of the rocks. It's not a 24-hour stream, Epic. Yeah, no problem. Qapla All, thank you for watching. And we will end it with Kuroga the Brave, I think. Kuroga the Brave.
Oh, give me a home where the orphans can't roam, 'cause they're down a uranium mine, where seldom is heard a complaint against Bird, 'cause his subjects are all treated fine. Kuroga the Brave, where the orphans and sassy both play, where often is heard, son of a bitch, from Bird, and the bridges don't falter or sway. When the airwaves are clear, there's a voice you can hear, through the noise of those turdest allies. For despite what you've heard, Gowron isn't a turd, is what the man cries. Caroga the brave, where the orphans and sassy both play, where often is heard, son of a bitch, from bird, and the bridges don't falter or sway. Anti-tracker might think Martok kicked up a stink in his plan to bring BirdOPrey down. But he soon changed his tune for a purse of doubloons. Now he kneels for the Carogan crown. Caroga the brave, where the orphans and sassy both play, where often is heard, son of a bitch, from bird, and the bridges don't falter